Here we go. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our exciting. I'm really looking forward to today's presentation with Jeff Soplop and Manny Villalobos. Did I say that right, Manny, or did I butcher it?
Villalobos good, but if you can say the via, like via
Via.
Lobos,
Oh,
yeah,
Villalobos.
Via
Okay,
Lobos.
perfect. Thank you,
yeah,
thank you.
no worries.
Um, so welcome. We've got quite a few people coming in. We're right at 10:01. So I'm going to give it just one more minute as everybody's coming in, but. Couple of things to make note of. We are going to use either the chat function or the question function for to make this as interactive as possible. We also have a poll in the webinar, and it's going to be a little bit different. We're trying some different technology, and there's going to be a QR code on the screen for you to answer because we want to have it a free form text so you can kind of respond with us. So keep your cell phones handy. I know you probably have them right next to you anyway, but just know you might have to pull those out a little bit later in the presentation to go with that QR code. So just so we make sure everybody knows where the chat function is and how to use it, I'm going to ask you guys a question and fill this out in the chat. So tell me in the chat what state you're from and if you have a dedicated energy manager at your school district. There's no wrong answer here, but we're just kind of curious what we're working with. So if you guys can use that chat function and type here, Kansas. All right, we've got somebody from Kansas. We've got a lot of people still coming in. So yes,
Yeah.
okay, great. We've got a couple people. We got some neighbors for you there, Manny. We got a lot of
I
Texas.
I see a lot of folks that are team of people coming in. Some of
Excellent.
my favorite people from Texas,
Paul,
my fellow.
we're not gonna play favorites. We love
We
we've
love
not
them
got New
all. Yeah,
Jersey, we've got
that's
Connecticut,
right.
Oh
Massachusetts.
yeah.
So great. Well,
Yeah,
welcome
Georgia,
everybody.
all over the place. Love it.
Seeing some
Welcome,
amazing
welcome.
amazing people here that I'm working with, and that's really cool.
That's right. Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. I'm going to introduce myself. Welcome. My name is Rachel Buchanan. I'm with Operations Hero. And on the call today, Paul Fletcher is also from Operations Hero. Some of you may or may not know Paul. You may have worked with him in the past. He's going to be here. We're going to be here primarily to answer questions and be in the Q&A and the chat with you guys. And Jeff and Manny are really going to be the ones to bring the presentation to you today. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Jeff. Jeff is our Director of Energy and Sustainability here at Operations Hero. And Jeff is also the CEO of his own company called Nimble Energy. Jeff comes with tons of experience in the industry. He's been in it a long time. He's been doing it for a long time. So I'm going to turn things over to Jeff, and he's going to share with you how we translate complex energy data into stories every leader can understand.
All right. Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate it. And so glad to be with everybody this morning. As Rachel mentioned, I do a lot of energy and sustainability work with Operations Hero and Nimble Energy. And I'm just excited to be talking about this today, especially because of where we're able to go now and because of the stories that Manny has to tell about the program that he's been building at Cypress Fairbanks. And so, some of you know Manny already if you're involved with TEMA. Others don't. He is just a superstar energy manager at Cypress Fairbanks ISD, but has also been with a number of other districts over the year, brings decades of experience to the table. And, just love getting to work with him because the things that we're going to show that we've been working on together, I learn as much or probably a lot more from him, as he does from getting to use our software and work with us. And so it's just really great to have that type of collaboration. And I've really been enjoying it and what we've been working on together. So, Manny, I'm going to pass it over to you. Do you want to do kind of a quick introduction of maybe yourself? And here, I'm going to go ahead and put up the intro slide while you do. There you go. And some of what you're working on there at Sci-Fair, and then we'll dive in.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I have had the privilege of working in energy management for nearly 3 decades. I can't believe how quick it's going. My career began in Spring Branch ISD. I moved to Tomball ISD, Katy ISD, and now Cypress ISD. And throughout my time in these districts, ranging from small to medium to the largest in Texas, my goal has remained the same, Jeff, and that is to be a leading energy efficiency district and be ranked on the top 10. And so I made it, and that's to focus in the state of Texas in cost per square foot, energy use intensity, so the EUI. We'll talk a little bit more of these type of measurements in the presentation. But the reason I share these districts from small to largest is to encourage everyone that this can be done. Regardless of the size or the resources of your district, energy efficiency success is achievable with focus, teamwork, commitment. And so these types of accomplished for me has gained some awards this year in 2025.
Yep. Yeah. And just awesome to see the work that you're doing and to see that getting those awards. So great.
I also just want to throw in there and encourage everybody, just because Jeff and Manny have very credentialed backgrounds and a long time in this, I want everybody to be encouraged. What they're going to share is doable, even for districts that don't have a dedicated energy manager
Absolutely.
and things like that. So thank you guys both so much for what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Yeah, and I think a lot of what we're talking about and where I'm excited about where technology has come today is that we're finding new ways to kind of embed expertise and make this more accessible to districts of all sizes, and that's really a big part of our focus. So so let's dive in. We've got some slides. We're just going to keep this conversational. So as Rachel said, go ahead and put questions and stuff in the chat. But first to just kind of set the stage a little bit. Kind of stating some of the situation that, I think a lot of you are facing, and I'm hearing this all the time, but developing these types of programs is challenging, but, increasingly more and more essential because of the things that are going on. Costs are rising, new technologies are coming online, but there's a lot of things required to really develop a robust program. You have to translate metrics into insights leadership can act on, focus on data, show how your initiatives are impacting the bottom line, balancing energy targets, use data to build buy-in. Those are some of the areas that we've been working on together and that I think, Manny, you're such an expert at. And then, kind of at the bottom there, just it all needs to be done with limited time and resources. And, we know, none of you have the resources that you deserve or that you would love to have in an ideal world. And so you've always got to make the most you can with what you've got. And, energy and utilities is constantly a place where, sometimes there's opportunities to find and control budget and reduce costs and stuff like that. And so, Manny, I think that's what you've really brought to a lot of the districts that you've been working at. And any thoughts on this here?
Yes, Jeff, I think that one of the main focus is to educate. So start with, before you start implementing different measures and set point adjustments and operation schedules, think about, and we'll talk about this and we'll dive deep into benchmarking, but
Yeah.
to educate and give your leadership a starting point, right? So we're going to create a reference. So I want you guys to keep that in mind as we continue to talk on energy and data and benchmarking.
Yeah, great. And so, some thoughts on what that kind of transformation looks like. To me, I think a lot of it is going from this kind of reactive mode to more proactive, being able to really drill in on where there are more specific opportunities and seeing programs build over time as they're able to do that. So it might start with grabbing a lot of low-hanging fruit and then go on to more advanced strategies and things that require even more data and analysis. But I think kind of the call to action here for a lot of us is going from just reporting kind of what happened to really being strategic advisors and helping be instruments of change and driving change. And so that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about how that looks and how Manny, you've done that at Sci-Fair. And I know benchmarking has been a big part of that. So we could, I don't know if you want to talk about this one anymore, if you want to skip on to kind of where you started from the benchmarking standpoint.
Yeah. So what Jeff is as you're putting your data together is that you're going to go into kind of like a reporter, right? You want to report the facts and you want to also have a plan of once you convey your information to your leadership is what's going to be the next step, right? Sometimes we expect leadership to say, so what do we do with this data? Okay, you provided a lot of data. So you have to start thinking about providing the information, but with a story and what are the next steps and what is your goal?
Yep, there you go. And so when we started out on some of this work, Manny, these were some of the questions that you identified. I think these could vary a lot, and we're going to ask for a poll in a minute about what other folks' questions are that you're grappling with. But when as you kind of have been working through your journey there, what made these some of the kind of pressing questions that you were focusing on?
Yeah, so limited resources, of course, right? Not enough manpower. That's going to be something that we were going into, and also a deficit on our budget. We were a large district, so $35 million reduction was a huge hit to our budget coming from the state. And so we had energy was always on my mind to be, conservative on. But this gave me an opportunity to also highlight the program. Um, when we think about, I think we're going to roll into benchmarking. Is that right? Next, Jeff. So
Yeah, I think it's
I
coming up.
think it might be this. This is the spot where I want you guys to think about, benchmarking as far as why is it important and why do we need it, right? So when you start an organization, and for me, it's been 4 districts, right? And so I start fresh, and you may be starting the program for the first time, or you might be new, but there's always politics, right? Who doesn't? I mean, everyone knows school districts can be very political, right? But starting an conservation program often faces resistance, right? There's forces at work, and there's organizational, political, there's ways we've always done things kind of mindset. There's hesitation or even maybe some sabotage, right, to your progress due to the fear of change. No one wants to change, right? So when I'll tell you a little short story, but when I left Spring Branch and went to Tomball, I was faced with Manny, save on our budget, but don't make any changes and don't make anyone feel uncomfortable. Well, that could be a challenge of its own. So I would say this, if you haven't started, start with building trust and relationships and not, you may have the best plans and ideas and visions, but without trust, even the best strategies won't gain traction. Uh, so benchmarking will give you credibility, right? It's the facts, it's the transparency. It's not how many thinks we feel or how things are running. It's it moves you from the conversation from how are leading school districts performing and how do we compare to those school districts, right? So it starts taking some of that politics away, and then it gets your leadership to engage and take some ownership and promote the right questions with this data. How do we become a leading ISD, right? That's the kind of questions you want your leadership to give to return. What other feedback? What would it if we moved and became a top district? What does that mean financially in terms of dollars? And then what you discover is that the politics start fading away. And I'll share another analogy. So when or another, this is my first one. It's when you do, as I'm getting older, I have to do these medical, like everyone, right? And do blood tests and kind of give you a reality check. You may feel that you're healthy and you're doing everything right. You may feel fine, but what are your numbers? What is the real story, right? So well, basically it's to identify any inefficiencies and issues that may become major issues. It provides a roadmap to improve the health of your building. So kind of, if you have trying to get you to relate what Jeff is and I are trying to convey with these data reports and information, it's similar to your health when you do your blood work is where are your blood sugars? Where's your blood pressure? Where's your cholesterol levels, right? And so you may be thinking I'm running operationally well and everything's fine, nothing needs to change. But what are your real numbers? That's the reason behind the benchmark.
Yep. And I know, Manny, you're fortunate to have some of these really nice localized benchmarks like the one we're showing here that Centerpoint puts together for you. Not everybody has that, but even if you don't, there are other resources that we can help you put in place to do benchmarking. There's Energy Star Portfolio Manager. There's other benchmarking methods that we can apply using data from CBEX or other things along those lines. So if you haven't done this yet or you're not sure how to go about starting it, this is an area where we can help, and it really does form a great starting point to the foundation of kind of knowing where you are and where you might be able to go based on where others are around you.
You're right, Jeff. So I just quickly on that slide,
yeah, go ahead.
just to give some feedback or some information to the audience is that so this slide, Jeff's correct. When we did our benchmark, it came out that we were ranked 15th. And if you heard me, where do we want to be? We want to be top 10. And so we were ranked 15 compared to 40 nearby districts on how we were consuming energy and where our cost per square foot EUI was at. And you might say, well, this is average, above average, not bad. But what does it mean in terms to be a top 10 on cost and savings? And Jeff is right. Having this data from the database that can help you find the cost per square foot, energy use in. So pay close attention to that when you run your numbers. And I would say, Jeff, that you want to do a 2 to 3 every 2 to 3 years benchmark your buildings. If you can use a second or a third party to also a third party so it's not necessarily you running the numbers, but if you have another third party to also confirm your numbers and say, yep, these two data are telling us the same story. Here's where you gauge as far as operation and of the effective of your program. And now you have a baseline and a reference point. And that's where I wanted to get with why I did this report, Jeff.
Yep.
I think
and I agree. Having that objectivity is great.
I think, yeah, just to your point, Jeff, I think the other great thing about this is it's not based on a feeling. It's not based on intuition. It's just based on the numbers, kind of like that lab work. You can't really argue with it. So when you take it to leadership, they can just see it very clearly. It's not, well, Manny thinks we need to do this. Well, Manny thinks we need to do that. It's, well, this is what the data is telling us. And I think that's super helpful when you're trying to get buy-in, that it's not based on opinions, but rather just data.
Yeah. So now we're going to do a quick poll. As Rachel mentioned earlier, we're doing this a little bit differently. So if you've got your phone with you, you can actually just scan this QR code and it's just going to open a form that you can type into and submit, because we wanted to do a more free text response. You can also go to this webpage here and enter it that way, but it's maybe a little bit more difficult to do it that way because it's a long string of numbers. So easiest way is probably just use your phone, scan the QR code, and it's just one question. And so, Manny has spoken about what some of the key questions that he works on answering and that he uses to help drive his program forward. So, if you could put, some thoughts on those, what are the ones that you're grappling with that would help you kind of, transition from data reporter to strategic advisor? And we'll take a look at some of those come in and see what folks are saying.
And if you're not super crazy about using QR codes, I know some people are, some people aren't. You can also use the chat and stick those.
Yeah, I was gonna say chat works too.
Chat. Yep. We just want to hear from you guys.
We try to get fancy with the technology.
We like to have a little fun, see what we can do.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, also the chat is totally fine. So I'm going to just read some as they're coming in. So, one is, how do we get different departments not to compartmentalize and to communicate better? I think that's great. What's the cost of utilities based on square footage and percentage in the building? If we change, how much can we save? That's great. Yep. So and we're going to talk more about that in a minute as we look at how we've been diving into that with Sci-Fair. Now that we've captured low and no cost opportunities, what do we need to do next? Here's a really good one. How will future energy trends impact our cost? And what can we do to mitigate them? So it's not just about knowing where you've been, but where you're going. And a lot of us are facing, challenging energy trends right now that we're trying to navigate. Accurate usage is another one that came in. Coming up with an energy management plan. How do I get started? Yep, absolutely. We got a lot of them coming in now. What are potential savings? How do you get staff to buy in? That's great. Yep. And we're going to talk about engaging leadership more, but I think there's, broader teams as well that need to be engaged in different ways.
We've got one here in the chat too, how to develop an actionable plan.
Yeah, there you go.
To dive into that some too.
What's our exposure to potential utility rate hikes? So we've done some analysis that we'll share that touches on exactly that with Sci-Fair, and we're going to keep diving into it more. How can we get high schools to plan events so that run times can be decreased? That's a great one. Yep. In fact, there was a district I was talking to recently that shared with me that they had a play at the beginning of, I think last year. It was before they put our platform in place, unfortunately. And the play, they had put everything in override when they did that play, and we had a lot of people in the building, over the course of however many days, and nobody ever switched it back. And it went undetected for about 6 months. Unfortunately, it cost them quite a bit. So it's the type of things we like to help you find faster. Are there numbers in going solar and LED lighting? Yep. How do we evaluate those things? And then here's one more that came in. So how do we engage our energy manager and see how it impacts my department? So okay, great. So a lot of great things, and so we're going to touch on these, as we talk more about the storytelling side of this. So as Manny and I have been working together, and we're going to show some examples of this in a minute, so we're getting to kind of showing the technology and the work a little bit more, but this has been kind of what the processes look like. And, we talk a lot about AI and where it can help feed into these programs. It's not magic, but it's a tool that can provide value in different ways. And so what we've been doing is leveraging it to say, what are the difficult questions that you're trying to answer? So define those. How do we connect in the right data sources? How do we apply analysis to those? And then how do we use that analysis to help you implement those changes and turn this into a virtuous cycle, a loop that allows us to kind of iteratively improve and drive things forward. And so, again, it is a tool that has limitations, but it's a very useful one for some of these purposes, pulling in different data sets, presenting information to different groups, engaging them, helping drive deeper forms of analysis. And so that's where we've really leveraged it in this process that we've been working on together, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then along with that, we've kind of blended in some storytelling best practices to keep in mind. So we just wanted to hit on these for a moment. These are some of the things that we've leveraged as we've been putting some of these analyses in place. And, Manny, you've been reviewing them and helping, kind of guide us about what the right path is. But then, we also recently presented some of this to your leadership team, and I think got a lot of positive feedback about the work that you're doing and the direction that this is going. So, any thoughts here on kind of key ones that you've seen be particularly useful as we've been going through this?
Yes, Jeff. So those are excellent questions too, and I think where you can start from the beginning, it's again educating your staff, right? So some of those, how do you get your departments to get on board, right? Because no one wants to really cut back on air conditioning or heating, and so the presentation that I did was to the CFO and COO, and on the benchmark once those results came out, and having that knowledge that in my region, anything, if you're operating at $1.10 per square foot, that's electricity, water, and gas combined annually, divided by your square footage, that tells you what your operation number is. So if I knew that, okay, the results came back at $1.20, leading districts are $1.10, that's 10 cents per square foot. And you might say 10 cents, Jeff, it might not be too much. If you find a dime on the road, you might walk by it. But in my case, Sci-Fair ISD is almost 20 million square feet, right? 18 million plus. So if you had 18 million dimes out there, you probably go outside with a shovel to start scooping those things up, right? So that's close to $2 million, right, on savings if you can reduce 10 cents on cost per square foot. And so this is the information that I wanted to share with everyone, is find out what your cost per square foot in your region, those parameters that are acceptable or what are leading numbers. And so you're trying to create, again, something that your leadership can get a grasp of to say, these good numbers, or are they, because you could have data, but if you don't know how to translate, so all these the transparency, it's going to be the one that's going to drive those savings, Jeff, from the pyramid here, if I had to say.
Yep.
And
Awesome.
Manny, I think when we talked, you might not have had I know Manny's going to talk a lot about the savings that he had, and when he went to leadership, I'll spoil it. They're already on stage 2 or 3 and looking to find lots more ways to implement new programs. and he can share more of the details, but it didn't necessarily start out that way. Is that if you want to share a little bit about that too?
Well, that's a good point. And, with any organization, and we talked about the politics, and when I came in, it was like, this department may not want to be on board with some of the thoughts that I had and ideas, and even though they were great, but we were facing a deficiency, and I knew I had that extra pressure. And actually, my COO came to me and said, I need to take $1 million from your budget right off the bat without me really knowing the data. That was really difficult. So I went off to, reducing. It was the summertime, so I was closing outside air to non-occupied buildings, were non-summer school buildings, turning off lights, and of course that made different departments upset. And I got called in to get a chewing, and basically I was informed that we worked at, like, in the census. You got to have everyone okay anything before you do anything. And I was like, oh boy, this is going to be difficult for me to reach that goal. But that went back to taking a step back, reviewing the data, putting a good story together, and saying, I'm starting off with some basic energy management one-on-one measures. Haven't begun to really do anything challenging. But I think that's where the traction started coming. And then I started to use that same presentation that I did with the CEO, CFO, and tailor to the operations, to custodial, and then maintenance and construction. We had several buildings operating 24/7. And I think that, in today's how we're operating, and we're talking about this conversation, I may just start with benchmarking. If there's interest for maybe a second conversation on what kind of measures can you actually do that'll bring savings, maybe that could be a second one. But I did want to say, you really have to start with the data information and understanding it. Where are you, and where are you compared to other districts? And then having the every 2 years, so you can have that information to compare to yourself to see if you're making progress. So yes, the politics, it's tough, but once you get a couple wins, then you gain credibility, right? And you gain trust. And now we're working on low hanging fruit was easy. It's no cost, low cost measures. But now I'm looking at more technical things to do for the district. So from the savings that I generated on operations, I'm now using to do a very effective PM program. We partner with a local mechanical contractor to help us start a PM program to make sure our chillers are operating optimal, right? There's that heat transfer on those pieces of equipment. And this is what I'll tell you, in Texas, at least, more than 50% of our electricity bill goes to HVAC mechanical. So that's where I spend a lot of my time, is working with that department to make equipment efficient. And you'll be surprised, maintenance, we're tough. It's tough. You have to cut back budget. So there's times the PM program goes out with it, right? So, but then you're going to end up paying when you start having chiller failures, and then you look at having chiller rentals, and what does that cost? Then you're running buildings 24/7, right? So it's a spiral if you don't have a strong PM program. And
Yeah.
that's a huge component to the energy program.
Yeah, and I think you're hitting on a lot of the strategic and trade-off elements of the job that you do, Manny. Like it's not just like I'm going to do one or two things and then I've checked that box. It's a constant, ongoing, working through the process and understanding what's next, and how to manage a lot of competing and challenging factors.
Yeah, we had somebody in the chat chimed in just how important the PM program is, and it's usually, he says, about 17% worth of energy savings just in PM programs alone. So again, back to those 17% may sound like a big number or a small number depending, but when you're talking about that number, it adds up quickly. We did have a question, and I know we touched on this a little bit, but I think if we could go back and talk about it a little bit more. The question is, where do you get the regional numbers on cost per square foot? And Manny, I know you got that from is it your distributor, your energy distributor?
That's right. So in Texas, we have two parts to our invoice for electricity. You have the retail rate, what they charge you for kWh, and that is negotiable. And we negotiated a rate, really low rate years ago, and we're locked into 2029. And then you have the distribution part of the bill. That's the KW part. That's the how do you deliver electricity to your buildings with wires and transformers, and that's CenterPoint. So CenterPoint here in Texas is really trying to incentivize commercial buildings to reduce the load on the grid. And so benchmarking is one of their programs, and they host a lot of the data to some of the nearby school districts in Texas. So this is maybe unique to Texas. Maybe Jeff can share a little bit more on that, but Jeff has the ability to go on the energy portfolio, and which I use as well because I want to look at how do we compare nationally, not just in my region. But my region has the environment, right? I'm not going to compare to maybe someone in DC where their
Mhm.
weather is completely different than Texas. Houston is the AC capital, right? So of the world. Therefore, we're focused strongly on humidity and comfort.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's great. And let's, as we talk about it, let's start looking at some of the data because I think that'll help to underpin like how we can pull those types of things together. So I'm just pulling over here first, just to kind of level set, like a quick screenshot or a quick. I mean, this is the system. This is Manny's EnergyHQ platform, and I just wanted to show this part quickly because this is all the bill data that we've processed just in the last 60 days for them. And just to note that getting this data into a structured format, pulling out all the useful information from the bills, not just usage and cost, but demand and line item types and rate information, all that stuff is the starting point. And so, fundamentally, this is where your program has kind of started and used this data to move forward, Manny. And so, that's really like we're going to show some other stuff in a minute. That's how we use this data to solve and answer these challenging questions. But the starting point is getting all this data into the system. And so this is just a quick snapshot of what that looks like kind of under the hood. And then, of course, there's a lot of other things once we get it in there that we can do with it. And so coming back to the benchmarking piece, we're going to take a look here at some of the outputs that we've been generating for Manny and with his input, and now your leadership team has provided input to this as well. But once we have that data structured, we can help you with things like benchmarking. And so, we mentioned Energy Star before. Manny's lucky that he has these great CenterPoint benchmark numbers that are highly localized that they provide as well. Energy Star does provide something comparable, even though it's at a national level. They do adjust for location and weather and things like that, so you get pretty good benchmarks. And so we can pull that data in as well. But then we can also help you look at other kind of nearby districts and kind of come up with more localized benchmarks in addition to Energy Star if you don't kind of already have some of those available. So those are great resources that we can start to pull in for you and kind of give you that starting point so you have a good idea of, okay, how are we stacking up now? What does it look like for us to have opportunity to improve? And as we've put some of this analysis together for Manny, your Energy Star scores are overall really great, and we've got more detailed breakdown of them below. But you're at an average of a 65.2. That's well above the median, and a lot of your facilities are up in that level that could be Energy Star certified. So great to see that. Yeah. So I guess, Manny, have you used Energy Star, as well as kind of a second data point for you to compare to that, CenterPoint report?
Absolutely. Yeah, Energy Star was a big program in Katy, and this is something that want to do here as my next step is to get some of these buildings to get the plaque, the Energy Star rating plaque. So Jeff, I think that's 75 or above on
Yep.
some of the schools. The reason I think 65 is district-wide is we have a lot of like anyone, administrative buildings and auditoriums that operate 24/7. So it does bring the average down. But
Yep.
what I want to say is like, where we started and where we're at today. So yes, the benchmark says, okay, in 2022, how were we operating? And I think you're going to have a chart kind of showing, Jeff, where if we continue that same behavior, where of 2022, where will we be today in 2025 as far as the budget? And I
Yep.
think that's going to be important. So Yes, but to answer your questions, yes, with Energy Star, Energy Portfolio is something part of my program as well.
Great. And so just to
Yes,
give
I'm sorry,
oh,
sorry to
go ahead,
interrupt.
Rachel.
We also had someone share in the chat that the EPA has good indoor air quality tools for schools, the preventive maintenance guidance document. So I think that that might be just another additional resource for people to use. One
Yeah,
addition.
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Tools for Schools is a great program. Yeah.
Yep. So just to orient everybody to what you're looking at here, this is an analysis that our system helped put together with a lot of input from Manny and his team about what they were trying to answer. So nobody wrote this or put all this text together. What we do is we feed that data that I showed you from EnergyHQ along with some of our underlying models that do things like weather normalization and a variety of other types of analysis into some AI tools, and they generate these types of outputs. And so we've gone through that cycle now several times. I mentioned before that it's an iterative process. And so at the top here of the report, it's almost hard to fit. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. This all into one screen. What we identified first, or Manny, what you identified first in this section has changed multiple times as we've been working through what's most important. But for you, it was really starting initially with like, hey, what are those key performance metrics that we want to show right at the top of the report as we're going to put this in front of leadership and other teams? What are the things that we want them to know? So what were your thoughts as we've gone through this cycle a few times and kind of putting this together and making sure you've got those right, kind of KPIs in place?
That's great, Jeff. Yeah, I wanted to capture what's our current cost per square footage, right? So that stands out in red, $1.20. That's what we were starting off on. And number
Yeah.
two, I wanted to highlight that this this district's going to continue to grow. We added 5 buildings since 2022. And so that means that do we need to ask for more funding to cover the energy cost? Or if we get a program in place, can we float those buildings, right? Essentially, add more square footage, but not ask for energy budget increase. And so, Jeff, those were the two main things that we were looking at. And then, of
Yep.
course, in 2029, we're going to have an electricity increase on rate. But uh, those were I guess, the three things that we wanted to
Yep.
definitely track.
Yep. And so those are all, a lot of those, key things are called out here at the top of the report. But then, as you referred to earlier, Manny, it breaks down things in more detail to make it easier to explain to folks what the impact has been of the program that you've been running. So you set 2022 as your baseline year, and one of the things you wanted to be able to show was how much would we have been spending if we had stayed at this cost per square foot instead of making the improvements of where we were. And so this chart breaks that down. So in 23, you would have been spending almost $23 million. In reality, you were over just a little over 21 million, and in 24, you would have been around 23 million, and you were actually down closer to 20 million. So incredible progress there. And so that allows you to show with that high degree of confidence, some of the savings you've generated so far. And then further down, we've got some of our projections for how 25 is going to turn out and the data that we have for that year so far. But I guess has this been helpful to kind of telling that story to the leadership and other teams about, hey, look, like we've already made a lot of progress and we can use this to make more progress.
Yes, this has been a key to some of the support I've received to reinvest some of those savings, right? So I've asked staff or senior leadership to allow me to reinvest some of those savings and implement a mechanical PM program that we started earlier this year. And so, yes, Jeff, this is one of the most important charts because it trends the behavior and what we're implementing along the way, right? So if you're wanting to start new practices or best practices, this is where you would showcase that, hey, keep supporting the program. We're on the right track.
Yeah. And then, being, a great energy manager, you also wanted to make sure we showed the weather normalized impact. And so, for those who don't know energy accounting and analysis as well, weather normalization allows us to adjust all the way down to the meter level what the weather impacts were kind of year over year. And so going beyond cost per square foot, we can apply different models to tease out, how much of savings and change were likely due to weather as opposed to other factors. And so layering this in adds, some additional useful information about kind of the savings that have been generated so far, but also just the risk that the district faces from the simple fact that the weather shifts from year to year, and some years are going to be, more mild than others, and we kind of have some of that called out down here in terms of degree days. And so I guess, has this helped you, Manny, as you're trying to explain what's a difficult concept? Like, most people get that the weather changes, but they don't fully understand the total impact weather can have on something like your utility budget from year to year, and that can be huge. Some years you can kind of just get lucky and things are more mild, and some years they're really not. So has that been helpful to kind of show that in more detail, Manny?
Yes, and to answer Sean really quick, yes, we're for this data, it's electricity, water, and gas. Those are the bills that we're tracking, and we combine those together in some reports, and others we're just tracking individually.
Yep.
And but this report, Jeff, has allowed me to, yeah, their 2023 was there were some record heat days. There were consistent 100-degree days. We also had a on-demand response here in Texas. That's a different energy measure, and that we participate. But yeah, this allows us to say also Uri had a big impact on our weather. Our natural gas budget was overspent in that year. And so that helps me to share with leadership. It's saying, hey, we had a hard freeze or we had a mild winter. That will drive some of the budget. So you may say, hey, we can take away from your budget, and I can share the data and say, yeah, we actually had a mild winter.
Yeah.
It wasn't all my efforts at this time, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
that does help either way, right? So
I think it helps build trust, right?
Right.
You're being very transparent about what you can
Right.
take credit for and what you can't, and where the risks are moving forward. Which
That's right, Jeff.
Yep.
But it affects the budget. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it all affects the budget. And so then, for this year, now we've got, pretty complete data through kind of June, July, and then we've got some projections of what the rest of the year is going to look like. And so now we're starting to move into the forecasting side of things and showing that, and then showing some kind of, here, I'm going to scroll down just a little bit, some year over year changes here across your different service types. So this allows you to show, look, like, here's what we've done so far this year, and here's where we think we're going to land as we get to the end of this year. And so as you think about your program, like, how important is the forecasting piece and being able to start, and we can look at the longer term forecast in a minute, but like being able to start, layering that in as well. So it's no longer just backward looking, but now we're trying to predict in the future how we think we're going to do.
Yeah, this is the report that I would say it's the don't be surprised down the road kind of report, right? So that's a tough conversation to have with your leadership when rates are going up, and having that forecast, looking forward and thinking, okay, what do we do now to lessen that impact, and what kind of measures and even purchasing equipment with a higher EER, higher energy rating. And so, yes, this helps us make those type of decisions now, Jeff.
Yep. Great. And so we've got a few other things broken down here, just that, areas that that you've really, dug in on. So like your facility level analysis, looking at this cost performance by facility type you mentioned earlier, really being able to recognize that some facilities are easier to make improvements on than others and are going to have, better reflective Energy Star scores than others. Has this, impacted your thinking about like where you might go moving forward at all as you've kind of dug into this, cost per square foot by facility type and Energy Star score by facility type of data?
Yes, this is kind of where you can break down by types of buildings, right? So let's say elementary schools. I have nearly 60 elementary schools. And so you could do a cost per square footage on a list of just your elementary schools and the cost per square foot. Then you can see what's above average, what's under average. And so just from that report on those buildings, you can benchmark yourself and say, okay, I can see these buildings at the top, my top 10 poor performers. Let me focus on and see why they're performing at such a high cost per square footage. So this is how where I would break into level by level, right?
Yeah.
Of schools, yeah, and buildings.
And I know here in Wake County, a lot of school types are built. There's similar schools that are built within a certain period of time. So like one high school type might be built. There might be 3 high schools in the district that share that same kind of footprint of a building and things like that. So you could assume that the consumption would be similar. So I know someone asked it, like one of the questions they were asking is about how to get their high school to participate and things like that. So if you have similar buildings that you could benchmark against and say, well, this one is consuming this one is significantly more, what's happening at this high school that's different than at this other high school to implement some of those measures might be helpful too.
Yeah.
Every building operates like a human being almost. It has its own character and characteristics, right? So you're right. It could be a cookie cutter, but for some reason, you know, one high school operates completely different. It could be even faced in the wrong different in the settings of the facing the sun. But yeah, you're right. It can definitely you'll find some interesting facts about your buildings when you run these costs per square footage, but it puts it on a level plane where you could, look at the cost per square footage and not really look too much on any other factor. So it levels the plane so you can look at your buildings equally and fairly, and you can compare them that way.
Yeah. And I want to jump more to the forecasting in a minute, but I guess one last thing to maybe touch on is you've done a lot of work to think about how to prioritize, what's next and score things and drive that moving forward. How have you balanced different factors? I mean, we've talked about the cost per square foot, but how have you been balancing different factors as you've been making your priorities about like what you're going to do next and justifying that to leadership? How's that kind of math been working in your head about what the right things to balance are?
I think it's just making what makes the biggest impact with the least amount of resources, right, Jeff? So, like this Saving Opportunities report, Side Ridge High School is the top of the line there. And what I noticed from that building, it has a really poor power factor. And so I've been able to invest some power factor correction equipment, and hopefully we can start seeing that respond in a positive way. But yes, it looking at that math and looking at which buildings can have the biggest impact, then you funnel your resources to that. The old days of doing audits is that you started on one point of the building or the district and you work your way through every building. Now with these type of reports, you're able to say, okay, these buildings are doing well. Let me focus their time to the buildings that need help.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And I would encourage folks to start putting, go ahead and start putting questions in. We're going to show a few more things, but I think it's great to have some questions ready for us to answer. We talked about the backwards looking piece, but we've also done a lot of work, on forecasting. In the other report, we showed kind of a short-term forecast just through the end of this year that's been generated as part of this process. I know, Manny, one of the big things that you're facing as a challenge a few years down the road has come out as we've done some more of this long-term forecasting. And so here's another report that looks at your forecasts going through fiscal year 2035, and it's pretty easy to see that you're expecting some major jumps here, especially in your electric costs that we've been able to kind of help you forecast a bit starting a couple years out. And so how has this been weighing on your strategy as well and looking ahead, and how do you want to use more of this forecasting, I guess, moving forward?
Yeah, Jeff. So this is makes it simple for leadership to understand that our electricity rate, we're in the 3.1 cent now, but current market rates are in the 6 cents to almost 7. And some of you guys outside the state of Texas might say, "Wow, that's 6, 7. That's actually a pretty good rate compared to what's going on out there in the other states." But to me, what it tells my staff, it's that. If we increase just 1 penny on our rate, I believe that is equivalent to $1 million or so on our budget that we will have to request. So we're basically going from 3 cents to 6 cents on the KW side of the rate. And so my staff is now very versed on where we're going to be. There's no surprises. It's even the board is aware that these market changes are going to go up. But it also means that when we go to 2029 and after that the more projects we do, the bigger of a payback it has, because the rate's higher. So right now payback might not be as good, right? Because the rate is low, but let's do whatever we can now, again, to lessen the blow of the cost of the budget increase that we're going to have to request. And it's nothing that I'm doing or we're doing as a team incorrectly or operating any different. We're It's just that the rate change, and just the rate changing changes the cost that we're now being charged per kW.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's great. And it's great that you're so deep into the data that you can see that coming and be helping to prepare for it, years in advance. And I think, again, that's where going from, just generating some reports to really strategic advising, thinking long term, putting the right, pieces in place and wrapping data around that really, makes a big difference.
Yeah, I saw a question. I think, Paul, is that from my good friend Melissa Kreiser at Klein ISD?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. You
She's
want to
one of
jump
the
into that one?
top, and yeah, that's a top energy manager there. If you guys ever get a chance to talk to Melissa, she's wealth of information.
Indeed.
Well, she asked the question, how did you come up with the priority score?
It was that on the report, Jeff, for the priorities?
Yeah, it was on the previous one. We had this priority score here, and we've actually got a breakdown of how this one is applied. Now, as with everything, it's a work in progress, but this one we've got, tying back to that concept of transparency and being honest about, kind of how this report is put together. It's got a breakdown of how this particular priority score. So our thoughts on this one or refinements that we might want to make to
Yeah,
it?
no, Melissa, I think, my goal is to be, like Jeff said, be transparent and put all our buildings in portable build, anything that can consume electricity into a benchmark, and not just put schools, right? Because then our average and our numbers look great. And so with any benchmark and in this data, I like to put anything that consumes electricity, which includes some poor performing buildings like portable buildings and our administration buildings. And so I like to show that to our administration as far as, hey, the numbers on our natatoriums, our administration support building are not the best. And but the numbers behind it, Jeff, I think it's just like any other building, correct?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, exactly. And just to, point out here, I think it's good that question came up because we've got this methodology section in here. This is what it takes to put together these types of forecasts and analyses. There's a lot that goes on under the hood to make this stuff look nice. But, you all don't need to know how to do like this level of modeling and things like that. This is where we can really come alongside you and help you make decisions around, how much history do we use? How do we apply it? Where do we use things like interpolation and weather normalization and et cetera and things like that. So
Right.
we always try to be transparent about how those are being utilized. But you don't need to do all of that work yourselves, but we can create things with this type of analysis that goes, I think well beyond what spreadsheets can do alone.
In addition to that, Jeff, I think, you and I talked about this, but is to, so my next items, like we were talking, is to start a preventive maintenance program, a very comprehensive for chillers and portable units, some low tonnage type of equipment. And so we've taken on these programs, but we want to track how much is it saving us? And also our bond, we're requesting that several of our older chillers be replaced. How much money will that save, considering that the rate will change, and what kind of incentive program grants are out there? And so we want to encompass all this into the one report. And this information actually came from my COO, apologize. And Jeff, you were part of that conversation, but
Yep.
can we track certain projects in a little more detail?
Yeah. Yeah. And so now, we mentioned this is an iterative process. So, we've put a lot in here already into this performance report and this forecast report, where I think that a lot of this goes moving forward is blending more of these estimated savings into these longer term forecasts to try to help provide more details around, can we help with this, electric forecast over the next couple of years, driving some of the things that you're pushing forward, Manny, and what might that do in terms of, reducing some of this impact over the next few years? Even if, as you mentioned earlier, some things might not pencil out great over the short term, but if you've got these significant rate shifts coming down the road, we can help model out like what is that cost avoidance look like over multiple years, and taking all that type of stuff into account. And I think that's going to be really important for next steps. So I'm excited to dive into that part as well.
And I think I just want to make sure everybody caught what Jeff and Manny said there, which is obviously some of what they're showing you is the technology that we have that can help you, especially kind of create the information, like Jeff said, starting getting all your bills in, analyzing all that, and some of the AI technology and things like that. But it's also the walking side by side that Jeff does with our clients and what we do with our clients and helping them for people that may not have that dedicated energy manager or may need someone to help go advocate on their behalf or with you. You know, Jeff and Manny talked about they were together in that meeting with the COO to kind of share the data and the findings and things like that. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that um, we're here to help in any way that we possibly can.
Yeah, that's great, Rachel. And I know we're, getting close to time. So if there's other questions, please put them up and, we'll dive into those.
Yeah, we did have one question, Jeff, which is if I'm new to all this, or maybe I've had some false starts, maybe some of the politics push back, and this wasn't in the question I'm interpreting, some of the politics push back. What's one thing I can do to get started today? How do I really kind of get moving?
Yeah, I mean, I think first you've got to know. I mean, it's my view. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Manny. But first, you got to know where you are in order to know where you can go. So we talked about benchmarking. We talked about getting your data together. A lot of folks, might still be using spreadsheets or nothing. I mean, we see that all the time. And, there are folks that were just at the very beginning of this journey on where we're pulling bills in, we're structuring them, we're starting to generate some of those first outputs. Those are going to lead to some of those ideas and recognition around here's where we currently are. And then we can use that to say, all right, now how can we evaluate specific opportunities and where we can go? So I think that's the best starting point, like really figuring out what the current state is, getting deeper into your data and where you're spending money now, and then using that to start to evaluate some of the best next steps. And more will unfold over time, but I think to me, that's always the best starting point. But what do you think, Manny?
I would say the same thing, Jeff, is where are you? Some energy managers will reach out to me or new folks and say, "Hey, Manny, how do you start an energy program?" And I would say, "Okay, where's your current cost per square footage and UEI?" And a lot of times I don't know, or I don't know what that is. And so in my mind, I'm already thinking, okay, let's start there, because then that'll give me some feedback to know maybe you're working all right, maybe you're doing great, you're doing all the things you're doing, or no, hey, you got a chance to reduce 5 cents, 7 cents, 10 cents on your cost per square footage.
Yeah.
And so I would say, I think, Rachel, you're going to put a slide with my contact, and you guys are welcome to reach out to me, and I don't mind grabbing the phone and we talk about energy management a little bit more. And also, this is a good chance for me to plug in TEMA. TEMA's Texas Energy Managers Association. We have now expanded on some nearby states surrounding Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, New Mexico, and we have chapters there now, and our goal is to be national. But with all that, TEMA is there for we have classes, online classes, we have a certification process to become an accredited energy manager. So there's the information there. I got my personal and my work and my office number. And if you want to reach out, I can point you at least to the right direction and kind of guide you. But Jeff, I would say he's got the starting point. If you want to know where you're at, talk to Jeff and see how he can get you tracking information without tracking your data. And it's difficult to manage a facility. I mean, I've managed 2 districts now that have over 100 facilities. There's no way one person can put their arms around a district that big and turn the ship, right? So I've been able to do it twice, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of data, decision information, so you can provide those new directions and coordinates to drive that ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And this webinar is being recorded, and I'm going to send out a copy of the recording to everyone. And I'll also make sure that Manny and Jeff's contact information is there, of course, in addition to mine. If anybody needs anything, we can certainly help you get pointed in the right direction. And I just wanted to reiterate what Manny said, that even though TEMA has historically been Texas centered and focused, they do have online classes and things like that you can take, even if I know I saw we had Connecticut and New Hampshire in the chat with us. So even
Hmm.
up there, they can still be helpful. So that's a great resource that's specific to school energy management. So I think that's a important distinction because managing uh, a different portfolio would be totally different than how schools operate. So we did have another question and that came in that says, how is the data being entered? Is this cloud-based? And so maybe Jeff, you could just touch quickly just on Energy HQ, what it is and how it works.
Yeah. And EnergyHQ is a cloud-based platform. We allow you to manually enter, bills and other data if you want, but we do also have data automation capabilities, and that's what Cypress Fairbanks is utilizing. So they upload bills, and we process those and turn them into usable data, and we make sure to capture all the different line items off of those. And I think that's one of the big areas where the automation really helps. Certainly, it helps save time as well, but Manny, you mentioned earlier, like knowing which buildings have, need power factor correction. Like you need to be able to get that data from, and it's on your bills. And if you're not capturing it, you won't have it. And, other things like demand and rates and tariffs and, all kinds of stuff. And so, anyway, just to answer the question, yes. So it's being captured by the platform. And then once it's there, we can use it to do all these great things. We can help you find that starting point, but we can also help you look long term, evaluate different projects, estimate savings. It goes on and on. So that's the heart of it. Is it all starts with getting that data together.
And from my experience, Jeff, I would say that, I mean, there's pros and cons of either entering them manually to let an AI or uploading them. I could say that we switched from having a person dedicated to entering utility bills, and that's all they did, because we have over 500 bills per month that we track, to now having this person freed up to do higher level technical things for me in my department and not dedicated just to data entry. So I do like the automated part of automating your build processing and tracking.
Yeah. Thanks, Manny.
And I know we're over on time, so for anybody that needs to hop off, feel free. Thank you so much to Manny and Jeff. I do have one more question because this comes up quite a bit, and I just want to make sure that I get this question out there, which is, what's the difference between, a lot of folks are just capturing their utility bill data, whether it's in a spreadsheet or manually in some other way. What's the difference between using something like Energy HQ and manually doing that through spreadsheets?
I have my thoughts there, but I'll let you take a shot at that one, Manny, because you've probably done it both ways before, so you might have better.
Well, I say this, and I say this about building automation systems, any systems that you have to manage your buildings. I mean, we have, as an energy manager or director of maintenance, facility supervisor, you need tools, right? Your technicians need tools to do the job. And so you can have a decent tool, but then you can have a very effective tool to do the right job. And that's what I feel that the spreadsheets, they'll get you by, but they can be corrupt. And who understands your spreadsheets? Only you do. And so what I tell you from experience is that if you have to fight systems to get the data and the story you need, then you got the wrong system. If you have a system that's pointing you and saying, "Hey, focus on these buildings and look at these numbers," then you kind of then that you have a real system. And that's where I will lean to Jeff and Energy HQ, is that I don't really have the time to keep up these spreadsheets and maintain them. I would say no matter, even if you're at a small district or a small organization, is having the right tool for the right job, and that will make the difference. And so if you step away, can you pass those programs to someone else and train them effectively? I would tell you not with spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Okay, we do have another question that I think is a good one. Is there a basic KPI list that every energy manager could use to set as a goal when establishing a baseline?
Well, we've talked about some of the benchmarking ones: cost per square foot, energy use per square foot, Energy Star. I think those are critical. I think some of the other ones that we looked at, that Manny, that you're highlighting, are, total savings from a variety of different perspective, areas where you have opportunities for improvement in terms of cost savings or, energy savings. as well, and then areas where you've identified risks over the near or long term that you want to focus on as well. So I think it's going to vary from place to place, but the benchmarks are always the best starting place. But then you can add a lot more to those to kind of give you more details information. So.
That's right, Jeff. I mean, there's different reports for different tools to impact your energy. And so we talked about a lot about kWh and conserving energy and cost per square footage, but there is also the part of the kW. How are you starting your buildings? Do you know your peak in your buildings? And so are you setting a higher energy rate within your rate, right? So there's a thing called 4CP. For my area, how we use the electricity is as important as how much electricity we use. So there's different reports for that.
Yeah.
So that can equally make an impact on the cost of the buildings. And we talked about power factor and other things that we like to track.
Yeah, yeah, and I think in a lot of places, historically, the cost per kWh has been the predominant factor in trying to find that lower energy rate. And as you're noting, Manny, a lot of places are seeing increasing costs per kW, transmission, distribution costs, other power factor, other things that are more tied to how the grid is operating than just your total energy usage. And so it's going to become more and more of a necessity to have the knowledge and the strategies available to address those things. I think we're seeing that certainly in Texas, but all over the country we're seeing that transition happen.
That's right, Jeff. And we could probably talk about that in a different session, but are you staggering your buildings correctly on your schedules? Are you bringing all your air handlers on at the same time? Are you bringing all your chillers at the same time? Or you have the ability to stagger your buildings, right? So even if you have to go a little earlier, the savings you have on your KW, so you're not slamming your buildings, right? Maybe you schedule, you can start with every 15 minutes, bring a group of air handlers, or maybe 30 minutes. Set the third floor first, then the second floor 30 minutes later, then the first floor. Maybe bring the offices on early with the kitchen and the third floor, right? So you start getting creative of how to start up a building. That has an impact. It's not just set it and forget it for the year. There's also a thing called optimal start that softwares can do that, building automations. But if you don't watch that, it can actually cost you more money as well. That's one of the things that I found here at SciFair that was it didn't have a cap on the energy or the energy optimal start. So there were buildings that were starting as early as midnight or the day before, trying to get to a certain set point by a certain time. So there's a lot of other things that we could talk about that will impact once you have your bills, your kWh and your cost per square footage and your EUIs.
Yeah.
Then you can start digging into your buildings to tackle some of the things I just mentioned.
Yeah, so there's that whole next level of
There's
kind
a
of
whole
insights and
yeah.
details that you can get into. But
Yeah, this is awesome stuff, you guys. We're way over on time. I know you guys have other things you have to get to, and everybody on the call does too. I just want to say a big, huge thank you, Manny, Jeff, for your knowledge, your and willingness to share it with everyone. I really appreciate it. The other thing I want to mention, we've still got a lot of people still here on the call, so it tells me there's a big interest here. So what I'm going to ask the audience is when I send out the recordings, if you guys will respond back to me. Jeff and Manny have already kind of hinted about maybe we could do another one and we could share maybe low-hanging fruit places to start, some different things. We could even get into some more technical areas. So if there are things, if you're like, we'd love a second session on this, let me know what that is, what you'd like to hear next, and we can make that happen. And maybe we even get Melissa or some of Manny's other friends from Team to join us and make it a panel discussion about some great ways to get started. So I'm going to
And
end it here just in the essence of time, but thank you everyone. Thank you for your being here and your time. And thank you, Jeff and Manny, so
hey,
much.
can I offer one thing
Yep.
that's an X factor to wrap up?
Yep.
This is a hard thing. Energy is a difficult kind of enigma to wrap your head around because we have all kinds of factors, right? But I think besides doing all these wonderful things that Jeff and Manny talked about, the community of energy management is important. Lean on each other, no matter what state you're in. Find your fellow energy managers. I'm sure there's an energy management organization within your state or state energy office. Do that. We do talk about TEMA a lot because TEMA has a model organization and they are going out to other states. So definitely get involved, talk to each other. And the reason why I've seen Manny be so successful and Melissa and others is they work together and they share ideas. And this is not a secret sauce or a secret recipe. So lean on each other, use that community, and get all these things going.
Yep, that's great. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Jeff, and a big thank you, Manny, for your time and everything you're doing. Talk to you guys soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Have a great one.